All right, starting with this lesson, things are going to start getting interesting. It's time for us to create our own movie with everything that we've shown you. What we're going to do is we're going to start out by showing you how we can take some custom created content from 3ds Max and export it out so that we can then import it into Unreal Ed and use it in our final movie scene. Isn't that right, Logan?
Right, now we're getting into bringing in our own content, so it's more of a customized movie.
That's right, so that we're kind of going to get away from using all the animations that are inside of Unreal Ed.
That's right.
Okay, so how do we go about doing this? Well, first of all, we need to have something created in here. Let me go and point this out real quick. If you happen to be following along with Maya, not a problem. Basically, what we're going to show you is going to work just fine with Maya as long as you have the ActorX plugin, and I'll talk about that in just a minute and even show you where you can get it from. So let's go ahead and show you what we've got. We've got two characters that have been modeled inside of 3ds Max. They've been textured with Photoshop, and then finally they were brought over into Motion Builder where motion capture data was applied to them, and then finally back over into 3ds Max. So if I come in here and hit play, you can see what type of animation we've got on our characters. Very cool stuff. Now, I will point out there's more than just geometry and animation here. We've also got a skeletal system on both of our characters. The characters have been skinned using the skin modifier to the bones in the scene, and we've got all of that properly weighted, etc., etc. And look for a VTM in the future on how to go about doing stuff like that. But the idea is once you've got your content created, now, how do we get this out? What we need to do is we need to actually export out both the geometry and the animation. So we're going to be creating two different files. Isn't that right, Logan?
Right, two files that we'll be able to read in with Unreal Ed to get a final animation package.
Exactly. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and come up over here. Now I'm going to come down and open up Kicks. What this is I've taken each of my characters and I put them in their own scenes. The animation timing is still exactly the same. Their positioning is exactly the same, though the positioning is not going to really matter that much because we're still going to have to reline everything up inside of Unreal Ed when we bring the characters into the map. But with the timing being the same, they both start playing at the same time. Everything's going to be great. We just have to line them up ourselves. And we're going to show you some tricks a little bit later on how we'd go about doing that. So now that we've got our character, go ahead and hit play. Make sure the animation's still there. All looks good. How do we get this geometry and animation out for Unreal Ed? Well, we need to use a plugin called ActorX. And you can get that plugin simply by coming over to udn.epicgames.com. Head over to that site. Once you get there, come over to Content Creation. And then from Content Creation, all you need to do is scroll down while looking on the left-hand side for the Tools category. Once you find Tools, up underneath it, you'll find ActorX. Go up under ActorX, and then up under the Exporter Downloads, you'll find two categories, Max Exporters and Maya Exporters. In our case, we're using 3ds Max. All we need to do is simply come down and look for the appropriate version, Max 4, 4.2, and finally 5.0. Since we're using 5.1, we'll use 5.0 here. All you need to do is copy this link right here, paste it up here, or actually just copy this line. It's not a link, that's why you got to copy it. Paste it up here, hit enter, and you'll be ready to save the file. Since it is a zip file, you'll need to uncompress it. There's a single file inside. All you need to do is copy that file over into your 3ds Max /plugins folder, and then restart Max, and you'll be ready to go. For those of you that are using Maya version 3.0, 4.0, or even 4.5, you'll be able to do the exact same thing, copy, ready to go. Okay? So let's go ahead and come back into 3ds Max. Once you have restarted Max with the plugin in the proper plugin folder, all you need to do is switch over here to the Utility panel. Okay? Come down here to More, and you'll find ActorX listed in the various utilities available. Simply click OK, and here's ActorX. First thing we need to do is come in and set our output folder. Where are we going to be sending out the geometry file to? Where are we going to be sending out the animation file to? So all I need to do is come in here and click Browse, and I'll just cruise on over here to my D drive, and I've already set up a UT2K3 export, and I'll go ahead and just tell it to use the path. Next thing we need to do is go ahead and assign it a mesh file name, and I'll call this Fighter Kick. Sounds good. Now, let's talk about the files that's actually going to be exported. Basically, we've got two different files. We've got our mesh/reference pose file, and we've got our animation file. So we've got the mesh one is a PSK file.
That's right.
And the animation one is a PSA file, talking about the extensions on the end. All right, so let's go ahead and write out our mesh file. So basically, once we've come in here and assigned our output folder and the mesh file name, fighter kick, we can simply come down here and click Save Mesh and the reference pose. Click, we're going to get a dialog telling us that the skin file fighterkick.psk was written. Beautiful. Now we need to get the animation exported out. And the way the animation works is basically we come in here and we need to digest the specific animation. Then we'll use the animation manager to package up all of the different sequences that we've got into a single animation package that we'll export out. Okay, so let's go ahead and start out by assigning an animation file name, just like we did a mesh file name. And we'll call this Fighter Kick Anim. Okay. Now what I want to do is come down here to the animation sequence name. And we're just going to go ahead and grab this entire sequence, 0 through, well, that's the range. Let's go ahead and assign the range real quick. 0 through 123. So I'll just do 0-123. Now the name, we'll simply call this Kicks. Good enough. And let's go ahead and digest the animation. So it's going to calculate through. Done. Very quick. Let's go ahead and take a second and talk about one important thing, though. You may, depending on how you're going to set your movie file up. If it's something that's going to occur kind of like a cutscene in-game, you may be interested in coming in here and sending out a single frame and kind of calling it something like Kicks Start or something like that.
Basically, in any case where you need to be able to, through a set of scripted sequences, force the mesh to be at a certain frame of animation, you'll need to be export a single frame of that animation. That way you'll have basically go to this certain frame and have it ready for the animation to start.
Exactly. Basically, to kind of simplify that just a little bit, let's say that we've got 4 or 5 different animation sequences that we're going to be packaging up into one PSA file. And let's say that we're going to have the animation start out on the 3rd sequence, okay? Well, our character's reference pose, in other words, when you bring the character into the map, the pose that the character is going to be at is the pose that we recorded back here at frame 0, okay?
Right, wherever we save the mesh ref pose.
Exactly. And what's going to happen is when you trigger in-game the animation sequence to start playing, your character is then going to snap to the start of that sequence. And if you want the character to already be in that sequence, or character, or object, or whatever it is that you've got animated, then what you may want to do, like we were just talking about, is simply export out a single frame at the beginning of that animation, so then that you can already play that part of the animation. In other words, when you're in the map, the character, the object, whatever it is that's animated will be at its starting position as opposed to the reference pose. Does that make sense, Logan?
Right, it just gives you the control necessary to have it ready to start your specific sequence, not staying at the reference pose.
Right, and we'll go ahead and mention this again when we get over into Unreal Ed, just to kind of help, I guess you could say, confirm what we're talking about right now. So we've already got our animation digested out. So what I want to do is come over here to the Animation Manager. And in the Animation Manager, you can see here's our sequence that we've just digested. It's called Kicks, and it's going a total of 124 frames and a bunch of different information about it. What we want to do is take that and go ahead and add it to our output package. So we can simply move this over here. Now, like I said a second ago, we could have 4, 5, 15 different animation sequences in this max file, this single file, if we wanted to, and then we would have gone through and continued digesting animation piece at a time, from this frame to that frame, here's its name, from this frame to that frame, here's its name, and continue doing that, and then come inside the Animation Manager, select all of these different sequences, add them over here to the output package, and then we could simply hit save, which is what we're about to do. But I want to point out one more thing. You saw how we put the mesh file name up here and we saved it out. Then we came down here and we put the animation file name, we typed that in. That did not have to actually be entered. But by entering that there, we can now see that over here up under File Name in the Animation Manager, there is the name, and all I need to do is simply hit Save. If this would have been empty, then all I would have needed to have done is hit Save As in here. So either way, I just wanted to point that out. So let's go ahead and save Kicks out. So we'll go ahead and tell it to save, and take a look at this. The Fighter Kick Anim.psa file has been written. Bones total, 35. Sequences, only 1. I'll go ahead and tell it OK. I'm going to delete Kicks out and tell it OK, and we're done. Okay, so we've got one animation out, and we've got one mesh exported out. So now what I want to do is come back up here. Let's simply come down and grab our fall down animation. Okay, so here's the fall down one. Yep, she gets smacked, and down to the ground she goes. Let's go ahead and rewind that. And now let's repeat the process. Instead of fighter kick, let's just call this one fighter fall. And again, we'll save out the mesh. We're using the exact same output folder. Go ahead and tell it OK. Fighterfall.psk has been written. Tell it OK. We'll come down here to the animation file name. As opposed to saying kick, we'll simply change that to fall. And then we'll change this from kicks to, we'll call it fall. And let's go ahead and set the animation range again being from 0 through 123. And then we will just digest the animation. Boom. Go over to the animation manager. Grab fall. Move fall over to the output packages. And then come down and hit save. And again, fighterfallanim.psa has been written. Simply click OK. OK. And at this point, we've got everything exported out that we need exported out. Okay, we've got a PSA file and we have a PSK file, and that's going to wrap up this lesson right here. In the next lesson, we'll show you how to bring those two files into Unreal Ed, and I guess you could say merge them in a sense, so that basically the character is then animated again. So that's going to wrap up this lesson. Thanks.